Welcome back to Trauma Recovery Anonymous, the podcast. My name is Richard and I am your host. Please God, over the last few episodes, you've come to understand that you suffer from a spiritual malady, not a mental illness. The person who caused your trauma, they were the one who was mentally ill. At the time of the event, that younger aspect of you was the victim. You were the survivor, and then you go on to become the victor. But you're no longer the victim. It never happened to you. It happened to a younger aspect of you. And so this event eats away at your soul. You have a broken spirit, a spiritual bankruptcy. You have a hole in your soul. And to heal your soul, you can't do that with medication. You can't do that with therapy. You can't do that with fitness or with food. You have to do it with a spiritual solution. And the only spiritual solution that offers miracles is the Christian one. And you don't have to join any church, any denomination, or any man-made religion. You simply make a decision to allow God into your life today, and you have a relationship with Him on His terms. I share about His terms in earlier episodes, but you choose to live your life in accordance with His terms, and in doing so, He will answer your prayers, and He will give you what you want. You learn to change your old thinking. You go from thinking about depression and despair and all these conditions to now saying, up until this morning I used to talk about and think I had PTSD or complex PTSD or bipolar, but today I've decided that I have a spiritual sickness, a broken spirit, a hole in my soul, and I choose to heal the hole in my soul today. And that's your new prayer. You repeat that over and over again until such time as God hears your prayer and understands you're on the same page, and then He starts helping you to heal that, and that thing eating away at you lessens. Again, if you've been on medication for years, you're going to have to deal with coming off that medication. But this is about understanding that mental health professionals can't treat the event from the past. All they can treat is what happens in the present, how it manifests in the present. They treat the nightmares, the flashbacks, your feelings, your emotions, when you're triggered, when your buttons are pushed, but they're all the effect. And science tells us we have to treat the cause and not the effect. You treat the effect and you're going to be in therapy for the rest of your life. And you're going to accumulate disorders for the rest of your life because you're just treating the effect, you're not treating the cause. I shared in a previous episode, imagine you broke your leg and you went to the hospital. The doctor didn't put your leg in a cast, or didn't give you crutches, or didn't give you a wheelchair, but he just gave you medication for the pain and sent you back out again. Well, over time your leg will get worse and worse, and you probably lose it to gangrene and probably fall off. But if you want to heal the pain, you've got to put your leg in the cast, rest up your leg in crutches or in a wheelchair, or lay up in a bed until the bone resets, and then you hit the cast off and you do rehabilitation work on the leg until you can walk again. Again, with the cause and effect. Treating the effect, the manifestations, the nightmares, that doesn't change anything, that keeps you broken. When you treat the cause, which is what happened to your younger self. So for me, it happened to a 12-year-old child. If you're a veteran, it happened to that young 20-year-old version of you who enlisted. If you were married to a narcissist, it happened to the young 22-year-old who got married to the narcissist. If you suffered abuse in your childhood, it happens to that young 8 or 9-year-old child who suffered abuse or trauma in their childhood. If it happened to a younger version of you who lost a child. If you're today and you're 60 years of age and 20 years ago you lost your son, well, you didn't lose your son, but that version of you, that 40-year-old version of you lost their child. You carry the memory of what happened to them, which is a horrific thing to happen to any parent, and sympathy pains for that 40-year-old version of you. But it wasn't you, because you live here today without a son in your life. But that version at that time suffered the horrors of that loss. Again, if you look back to 9/11, almost probably 25 years ago, the person you are today, maybe you're 70, you're looking back at a time when at 55 years of age, in your office, you went out to get a cup of coffee, and while you were out, 9/11 happened and all your colleagues died. It didn't happen to you, it happened to that 55-year-old version of you who lost all their colleagues, and so on. Understand, it didn't happen to you. You have to treat the event that happened to them, and since it happens to them, you can't process it. You have no power over it in any way, shape or form. You must give the details and the baggage of that event back to that younger aspect of you. I give it back to that 12-year-old child. You're giving it back to the younger person who enlisted, the young person who married the narcissist, the young person who was harmed in childhood, the young person who experienced the 9/11, the young person who suffered a trauma, that's the person you're giving it back to, and they take it from you and they step into the light. I shared in a previous episode, they're stuck in a state of purgatory. They can't cross over until you give them back their baggage. But you bring in their baggage into the present, and suffering as though it happened to you is the greatest crime you've committed against your inner child, your younger self. It's their baggage. It's got nothing to do with you. You must return it to them, to leave them step into the light. They can't cross over until they have all the baggage. But when you give the baggage and the details of it back to them, and you give all the darkness you've accumulated in the intervening years over to them as well, and they step into the light, you're free of that event completely. Now when you speak to your therapist and the therapist asks you how you felt about the past, you're able to say, I know what happened to that young 20-year-old version of me who enlisted to go off to fight in the war. They've left this plane of existence with all their baggage. It's got nothing to do with me. How I feel about it has no bearing on my case. But now that that's gone, I want you to help me to make amends, to make restitution, to set healthy boundaries, and to have a life where I can become independent once more. And you go and you do the work with your therapist to become that independent person. And then maybe after 10 or 11 or 12 weeks, joy for you and joy for your therapist. You end up being able to be independent and have your life again, and they get to close your file. You went out by having a normal life again, and they were now closing a file they thought they'd have open forever. Whatever happened in the past didn't happen to you, and it didn't happen to me. It happened to a younger aspect who lived in a different lifetime. I'm a 65-year-old man today. I'm a husband and father. A 12-year-old child 53 years ago suffered a trauma event. He wasn't married, he didn't have a wife, he didn't have children. He lived with his parents, he lived with his siblings, he lived in home, and he went to school in his local school. He lived in a different continent to me today. For me, my parents are dead, my grandparents are dead, one of my siblings died of leukemia. I live in another continent. We're not the same person, so it didn't happen to me. It's none of my business. What happened to that younger aspect of you is not yours to suffer today. So give the cause back to your younger self. Let them take it from you, and then the effects will no longer have any rhyme or reason to be in your life, and they will fall away like a bad habit. This program is called Trauma Recovery Anonymous. It's a powerful program. It's the first 12-step program designed off the 12 steps of AA for people who suffer with past trauma memories. The first part of this two-part program is to give the details and the baggage of the event back to that younger aspect of you. So for me, it was back to a 12-year-old child. For you, it might be the veteran, it might be the 20-year-old version of you who enlisted. If you were married to a narcissist, it might be the young 24-year-old who married, and so on. Whoever was that person in your past who suffered the trauma event themselves, that's who you're giving this back to. And it only takes 2 hours. You're not a part of the process. You don't have to do any of the work. You're simply saying, this isn't mine, it's yours. I give it back to you freely and unconditionally. And in that moment, they take it from you, and you're free to live your life in the present. Your therapist asks you about the past and how does it make you feel, and you're able to say to your therapist, it has nothing to do with me. It's none of my business. I feel for my younger self, but they have left this plane of existence. They've stepped into the light, into the mansion prepared for them in our Father's mansion, with all of their baggage, all of that crap, and they've taken my crap too. Now I'm free to focus on my life in the present. I want to make my life right in the present. For the days I have left on this earth, I want to make amends and restitution to my ex-wife, or to my ex-husband, and to my children, and to my parents, and my in-laws, and my outlaws, and my siblings. I want to get a job again, even if it's stacking shelves in a supermarket. I want to become independent again and have a job and earn money and travel and be a part of life. And then you do that. You complete the 12 steps of Trauma Recovery Anonymous, and you work with your therapist, and suddenly you find in 6 months or 9 months' time, you complete all your work, and your therapist says, you've done it. You're back in the land of the living. Good luck to your life. They can close your file, and you have your normal life again. This isn't rocket science. It didn't happen to you. It is none of your business. You're not mentally ill. You don't have a mental disorder. You have a broken spirit. Now granted, if you've been plying your body with medication all these weeks, months, years, or decades, you have caused a chemical imbalance in your body which has made you feel crazy. But that's the only craziness you are. You weren't mentally ill. You weren't born mentally ill. You weren't mentally ill suffering a trauma event, and you weren't mentally ill after the trauma event. The person who caused the trauma was the one who's mentally ill. You were the victim, then you were the survivor, and now you get to be the victor by giving it back to your younger self, the victim, and letting them step into the light so you can be free today to have a life beyond your wildest dreams. Only you can do this for you. No one else can do it for you. You must embrace the truth. The past is none of your business. It's your job is to live fully in the present, and to do so, you must give the past back to your younger self. Now, if you can get this program on Amazon, you can contact me and I will take you through the process. I'm not here to fix or save you. I don't plan on being your therapist for the rest of your life. I will simply take you through this 2-hour healing event. At the end of the 2 hours, you will know in your body, mind, heart and soul that the event is gone from your psyche. That's the experience you will have. You will have performed at least 7 miracles during this process. Not me doing it for you, you doing it for yourself. Even if you don't believe in God, if you're an atheist or an agnostic, or you don't go to church or you haven't been to church, by doing this work, you will perform at least 7 miracles on yourself. And these miracles are gaining peace of mind. To go from a rat brain and suicidal and depressed and morbid to suddenly feeling at peace, that's the miracle you give yourself. And when you've completed this, you will know you're free of the past. And then I take you through the 12-step program over an hour. And at the end of those 12 steps, you know you're free of the past. Now, they say to get rid of a bad habit, you have to replace it with a new habit 66 times. So you'll end up doing these 12 steps, going to bed at night, on awakening, maybe on your morning break, on your afternoon break, on your lunch break, maybe on your commute to and from work. You may do these 12 steps 6 times a day. And 11 days later, you'll have broken the back of the mental disorder diagnosis or misdiagnosis, and you'll be completely free. And in that moment, you can say to your therapist, right, I want to work on mending the bridges with my family. I want to make amends, make restitution, and you can get them to do what they're trained to do, is to help you have a clear mind, a peaceful mind, and have a normal life. They can still do the work with you, and they can do your work, and you can have that therapy relationship with them for the rest of your life if you want to, because they're always focused on being a part of the solution in the present. But you're the only one who can get rid of the past. That's all down to you, not your therapist, not a therapy, not a medication. You have to make a decision to change your attitude, your outlook, and your perspective about what happened, and realize it didn't happen to the person you are today, so it's none of your business. And then you embrace the concept of 12-step recovery of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. And honesty is, if you've been in therapy for months, years, or decades, you know it's not working. That's the honesty. It's not working because I'm still as bad or worse off than I was when I first came in. Open-mindedness, open to the idea of something old, something new. You may never become a Christian, but you will claim your miracles. And then you'll try this holistic practice. That's the open-minded, and the willingness is to do what needed to be done. So willingness is to take a chance on something else. Now again, if you've been on medication for years, you'll probably need your therapist to get you to go to some treatment centre. My recommendation is you go to a treatment centre for at least 6 months, if not a year. Not only do you want to just do this work with me, but you want to be able to recreate yourself. That while you're there in that treatment centre, they set up a program for you where you're learning all skills like master chef and barista and IT and driving license and so many skills that when you come out of that place, you're able to get a job. You have a fantastic portfolio. But this is about you finding a safe place where you can do this work, become a new creation, and then start your life over. Thank you.